Please give me 5. Thank you. Welcome and good morning. My name is Shelley Nielsen. I am the principal here at Peter Hobart. I recognize a lot of faces from those students who were once at Aquila before I arrived back here at Peter Hobart. This morning we are really lucky to have a national speaker talking to us about his struggles and his life experiences to share that with you. We are also really lucky that this came to us as a gift from Autism Speaks, which is an organization that one of our educators, Mrs. Jen Ziff, is a member of. So in just a moment, I would like to introduce her, but before I do that, could we please have a round of applause for having this special gift brought to us. Then Ms. Ziff, would you please introduce our speaker today?
Thank you, Principal Nielsen. Thank you, boys and girls, for coming today. Jesse Saperstein is a best-selling author, an autism advocate, and a motivational speaker. He's considered one of the most respected leaders in the anti-bullying movement and one of the most courageous and passionate autism advocates of his generation. Jesse also has a form of autism called Asperger syndrome. Jesse's story, Atypical Life with Asperger's in 20 1/3 chapters, was published by the Penguin Group in April of 2010 and immediately became a popular memoir due to its practical advice and his outrageous humor. The book quickly rose to the top of Amazon.com and placed Jesse as a dynamic media personality, a motivational speaker, and most importantly, an advocate for people with disabilities. Please join me in welcoming Jesse A. Saperstein to St. Louis Park.
I also would like to once again thank Autism Speaks for bringing me here, and for my new friend Cami Kramer and her husband Tom, who chauffeured me throughout the entire city of Minneapolis for the past week. And I had the privilege of meeting her sons, Henry and Elliot. Elliot has a form of autism called pervasive developmental disorder, otherwise known as PDD. And I have a slightly milder type of autism called Asperger syndrome. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about. I'm here to talk to you about who I am, some of the challenges I've faced, and what we have in common despite our challenges. That's the whole point. We have so much more in common than we have difference. And by the way, I gave you guys a big shout out on KARE 11 Eyewitness News the other night, so I hope some of you heard that. I'm really excited to be here, and I hope you get your 15 minutes of fame out of my little shout out that night with Diana Pierce. Now, I want to show you my book, Atypical Life with Asperger's in 20 1/3 chapters. By the way, you're not to read this until you're about 5 years older because it's not written for young people. I wanted to write a book that appealed to the adult public because oftentimes things can get worse when you get older, when people don't understand. My job is to not just talk to you, but try to make it possible for you to have a wonderful future when you get to be my age. And people see more than the superficial, the characteristics they see at the surface. What Mary is talking about is a movie called Temple Grandin, and I've actually met her a couple of times. She's an amazing woman, and she invented cattle chutes to help with cows being branded and processed for meat, to make the process more peaceful for them. And she learned that when she did it to herself, it produced the same effect. She was calm. She was able to relate to animals so she could relate to people. And like this gentleman said, she has a lot of difficulties with social interaction. For example, I met her for the first time at an event, and I said to her, "Remember me? I'm Jesse Saperstein. You read my book, and you wrote a beautiful comment as an endorsement inside." And she just stared straight ahead, not even paying attention to me, and she said, "Oh, okay." And I thought to myself, wow, that was kind of rude. How could she do that to me? But then I realized maybe I caught her on a bad day, and it was a day when she was overwhelmed. Then I spoke to her on another day, and she was the friendliest person in the entire world. And she even spoke on my anti-bullying video. So that's the whole point. Many times you have to look beneath the surface to see somebody's true colors, their beauty, the part of them that makes for an outstanding friend, family member, coworker, employee, and student. I hope that you will do that more after I leave here. And you've told me about what you think autism is, but I have Asperger's. Does anyone here have Asperger's? Can anyone tell me about Asperger's?
It's a really social thing, and usually people are more, they like to keep to themselves, and they can really relate to animals.
That is true. People with Asperger's like cats and dogs, and they relate more to pets sometimes than people. But the definition that I had when I was young is that there was no definition. I always tell people being extremely weird was not considered to be a disability. It was seen as a character flaw, something to be corrected, something that deserved criticism. I was diagnosed at age 14 after a really tough time in high school. I always had problems during transitional periods growing up. New schools, new life phases, it almost always brought out the absolute worst in my condition. And there's also no real definition for Asperger's. We have an expression in the autism community: when you've met one person with autism, you have met one person with autism. These are some of the characteristics of people like myself. Individuals with Asperger's syndrome can exhibit a lot of characteristics. They can be angry, mellow, a genius, complete with many learning disabilities, selfish, generous, lighthearted, serious, fun, boring, passive-aggressive, and probably a few others that I never even thought of. So it's hard to tell who has Asperger's and who does not, but it's seen as so mild, so benign, that people think that the person's weird. They're just different. They're being inappropriate. But then when you get to know them better, you realize there's some similarities that you see. Like they can have a monotone voice. They have trouble fitting into new environments. But the thing about autism is that people think they live in their own worlds, but they really want to be a part of your world. They want friendships and relationships just like everybody else. As I said, we have a lot more in common than different. And the other thing they like to do is play with ridiculous toys, like this, for example. Whoa. Whoa. Oh, yeah. Okay, one more time. By the way, I didn't get this good at this toy by doing it all the time. Instead of doing better things with my free time, because that would be kind of pathetic if I played with this all day long, which I do. They may also do things that people their age have stopped many years ago, like observing Halloween with a passion. They may dress up in stupid costumes after everyone else has moved on, like this, for example. Yeah, check this out. I just want to tell you that my problems did not necessarily go away as I grew older and matured. In many cases, they became worse. For example, I went to college and I did exactly the same things that I did in high school. For example, in high school, to get a date to the junior and senior proms, I asked out about 60% of all the young ladies in my school until somebody finally said yes. And it turned out to be a wonderful experience going to the prom. Then I entered college, and I did exactly the same thing. I continuously called people up, asking them out on dates until eventually somebody said yes or maybe. And these behaviors earned me a lot of nicknames throughout my college experience, like Sketchy Jesse, Scary Jesse, Running Jesse, the Psychopath, the Stalker, Weird. And even though I did have many good experiences in college, I was still very angry, not just about the pain, but I knew that if people took another look, if they saw there was more to me than doing a terrible job making a first impression, they would see that side that some of you are hopefully seeing right now. I've always been really angry when things like this happen, but I believe that anger can be a good thing. I have an expression, there's only one real type of negative energy. People always told me, you have too much negative energy, but the only real negative energy is any energy that negates a positive action. If you don't do something positive, then it is negative. So one positive thing I decided to do was take a break from going to school after college. No graduate school, no master's degrees. And that little break, by the way, get the music ready. That little break, my friends, is now 8 years and counting. I just did that to show how proud I am of not going to school after college. It's one of my life's greatest achievements, mainly because I would not be here right now. I wouldn't have accomplished writing a book if I chose that path. Sometimes people criticize you for taking a different path, but then you have the last laugh when it does work out and you're able to help people. I don't think you can guess what I decided to do after college. I went on a little hike, and when I say little hike, that's just a figure of speech. I decided to walk from Georgia to Maine. So I walked the distance that most people would take a plane to cover, and I started my hike on March 9th, 2005. I started walking for 2,174 miles. Do you know how long that took? And I finished the hike on October 18th, 2005. So my hike of the Appalachian Trail took 7 months and 9 days. I performed the hike for a pediatric AIDS foundation. I saw that people with AIDS were also suffering from the same fear, irrational hatred, and I could relate to their struggles, and I wanted to do something for the cause. By the end of the Appalachian Trail, over $19,000 had been raised for the Joe DiPaolo AIDS Foundation to send kids to camp who contracted the disease through their mothers at birth. And it was a chance to show the public what somebody like myself is capable of when they're given the right opportunities and enough people to believe in them. My hope is that you're not going to have to wait so long for that chance. Success will come at an easier pace. But after the hike ended, I became really successful overnight. I was treated like a celebrity. People were more likely to ask for an autograph than accuse me of being a psychopath or a stalker. And I don't know if you're familiar with the astronaut Jim Lovell from Apollo 13. You've seen Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks, perhaps. Well, I believe it was him who was treated as a hero after he came back from his voyage. Then somebody said to him, "You know, Jim, if I were you, I would memorize where all the exits are, because the lights are suddenly going to go out, and when they go out, you're going to have to find your own way off the stage." That is exactly what it was like for me after the hike ended, only it was much worse because I have Asperger's. I had to learn how to be an adult with my condition. All of a sudden, there were no breaks and no second chances. In many cases, I was lucky to even have a first chance. In college, I wanted to be a teacher. That did not really work out so well. I substitute taught, and people were afraid of me. And sometimes I would do something inappropriate to deserve to be fired. Like one time I answered my cell phone in the middle of class, and another time I was describing a very inappropriate episode of a naughty TV show called Desperate Housewives right in the middle of class, just telling the students about the episode and what I saw. This was such an important experience because I learned that just because I have Asperger's, that's no excuse for saying things that are not appropriate and not fighting the good fight. If you struggle with a disability too, my message for you is to keep fighting, and you have to be the ones who always do what you say you're going to do. If you do have something wrong that's offending people and that's just plain inappropriate, then you do what you can to fix it. My attitude is, if I'm doing something that's not appropriate, I want you to tell me. I cannot fix it if you're not honest with me. I want to be accepted, and I want to deserve that acceptance. So I tried really hard, and the firings still continued. And sometimes I would get an excuse. The most ridiculous excuse was, well, somebody heard you tell one of the students that your name is Jesse instead of Mr. Saperstein. It scared me that this was happening to me when schools should understand. I think that if I worked for an elementary school like this, I would have had a lot more of a chance. Everyone here seems so incredible and so embracing. The thing about weakness is that sometimes you want it so badly, you want to be successful, and you're not able to just let it go. Letting go is the worst thing you can possibly do. So instead of accepting my weaknesses, I found a much worse place to work, far worse than being around little kids and having to watch what I said. I decided to go into mortuary science, and that's just a fancy word for I worked at a funeral home with people who had died. You would think that that was the greatest position on earth for someone like me, because it's the only time where I could say something inappropriate in front of the main customers and nothing bad would happen, like they would not complain, if you know what I mean. But I also did a lot of work with the families who came in, like the living people who came in for the wakes. And I had to learn to only say 4 phrases. Those phrases were, hello, goodbye, I'm sorry for your loss, and the bathroom is around the corner to the left, past the water cooler. And because I wanted it so badly, my weakness became my strength. That sometimes happens, and what you begin to understand about individuals with autism is that in many cases they can be friendlier and more social than some people without a disability. I learned that bullying does not always stop when you become an adult, so I decided to do something to fight bullying, which may be unnecessary. My decision was to jump out of I jumped out of a plane. So can we...
Well, when I was in high school, I was horribly bullied. I mean, kids called me retard, tape recorder, bones, all kinds of bad names. I just didn't fit in with the other kids. When I was in elementary school, I fit in because I did a lot of building projects, played a lot of games, made kites and other kinds of things. But in high school, I just didn't fit in at all. And the only refuges I had away from teasing were horseback riding and the science lab. And those places were just essential for my well-being, because the students that were interested in horses or electronics were not the kids that did the teasing. But high school was absolutely the worst part of my life. And if I hadn't had the special interest groups, I would have just gone, completely crazy. I want to really encourage people to get involved in special interests, whether it be art, computers, music, drama, the school newspaper, some kind of special interest thing. And, bullying is a horrible problem. I get asked all the time, parents ask me all the time about it. And there's some situations where the high school works out just fine, and there's other situations where they just have to take the kid out.
All right, here we go. I just want to say that I've been waiting 30 years for this moment.
not just the skydiver and bullying, but finally get to say this expression and mean it literally. Thank you for letting me drop in on you. But I believe we all know why we're here today, besides watching me plummet from the sky like common bird poop. This is more than ending the abuse, but also understanding what can happen when we take the time to realize there is so much more to some people than being overweight, socially awkward, or having a disability. We will also recognize the insanity of hating people because they are gay. Show them the mercy that did not often exist during my childhood. In turn, we shall eliminate the hatred, bullying, and irrational fear that seemed to be a constant presence. But we are better than what is convincing so many young people to give up hope in the worst way possible. Too many lives with unknown potential are forever lost. If you believe you are guilty of creating this pain, then let today be your day of exoneration. Maybe you did not know better or understand that your actions could have deadly consequences. Let this be the first generation to enjoy acceptance while having something to fight for. It cannot and will never get better someday. It will become better today. I am not suggesting you jump out of a plane, but try to find your own unique way to become heroic throughout the 2011 to 2012 school year and those to follow. Advocate for those who deserve a friend, or give somebody a voice who has been silenced by perpetual abuse and ignorance. Know that the person you fight for today could possibly be the life you're saving tonight. Our passion this afternoon will give birth to more voices until bullying finally dies. Thank you for being here today and standing alongside me.
As I was saying, every child who spoke out about their anti-bullying experiences was on the autism spectrum, like me. I believe that was even braver than me jumping out of a plane. Jumping out of a plane was easy. Okay, fine, it wasn't easy, but I realized there's people in this world who have worse problems than skydiving. I knew that things would be okay. I don't know if you caught that statistic, but the chances of being really hurt in an accident are about 1 out of 100,000. But I kind of knew that even though it would be pretty scary, I'd be okay and it would be fun. But the kids talking about their experiences with bullying and autism was extremely courageous. I only hope that a good number of you will follow in their example and be honest about what you have. In a perfect world, everybody would be treated equally, regardless of whether they have a disability. People contacted me after my book was published. They said, "I'm so sorry that if I ever made fun of you, Jesse. I did not know you had autism. I wish you had told me." I wanted to say, well, why couldn't you have made me a friend or be nice to me, because I'm a nice person, because I have good intentions and I deserved a world without bullying. But sometimes when you tell people what you struggle with, their attitudes will change. People criticized me for being really uptight and awkward. I mean, a lot more than I am these days, at least, because when I was struggling to control everything coming out of my mouth, my mannerisms were extremely rigid and awkward. I talked like a total robot because I knew if I relaxed, I'd say something really inappropriate to get myself in trouble or lose my job. Once people knew that this was me trying to make them comfortable, making an effort, that they changed. They saw me in a different light. Education is the most wonderful thing you can give somebody. The great poet Maya Angelou once said, "When you know better, you do better." And If you are affected by autism, be the one who gives the greatest weapon against bullying. Educate people, allow them to ask questions. If you don't have a disability, be brave enough to ask questions to somebody else. Sometimes you may hear, "Excuse me, that's none of your business," but I think I speak for most people when I say, if I had three choices, being bullied, being ignored, or having somebody ask a question so they could understand, I'd rather have them ask me a question, even if it's sometimes uncomfortable explaining myself. If you have been a bully or you are a bully, don't be so hard on yourself. Use this day as a day of exoneration. When I say exoneration, that means it's a day to start over and forgive yourselves. I think that bullies can be victims and victims can become bullies. I'll give you an example. When I was 6 years old, I used to follow this little boy around because he was so much shorter than me, and I'd say, "Oh, Nathan, you are as small as a little pebble." And I did this nonstop until the older brother came along and really taught me a lesson twice. So when I was on the ground like this, I thought to myself, I don't think this is such a good idea. So my days of bullying pretty much came to an abrupt halt at age 6. Maybe if that had not happened, I would have continued to find victims because it made me feel good in the moment. A lot of our actions are determined by experiences, but now you know better, and I don't even think I have to tell you this because it seems like so much acceptance was already in place well before I came here. I'd also like to say that my success is what happens when the bullying and fear ends and the acceptance and embracing begins. I hope that you will have the same chances I've had, and your adulthood will not be so ingrained in fear. I think all of you are absolutely incredible, and I will work to make sure that people will embrace you when you become older and right now. I look forward to being your partner, teammate, and most importantly, your friend throughout our mutual journeys. Thank you for having me, and I'm open to questions and answers right now.
Jesse, we have one over here.
How long have you been getting bullied through your years?
Honestly, I was very lucky in the sense that my times being bullied were not constant. These days it seems more constant, and that's what prompted the anti-bullying movement. And I was usually bullied during times of transition, whenever there's a new phase in my life, and then many times things would, they call it dying down, things would get better. And let me think, I haven't been bullied for an extremely long time, ever since my book came out. And these days, people are more likely to ask for that autograph than bully me. But the point is that it should not take publishing a book or jumping out of a plane to end your days of being bullied. People should just see who you are and give you a chance.
Was it just physical bully, or was it word bully too?
Sometimes it was physical, but most of the time it was emotional. I think words hurt a lot more than bruises, because bruises heal, but what you hear from people stays inside you forever. So it was mostly, what hurt the most was being called a loser. Nobody likes you, you have no friends. And as an adult, it hurt more when people told me that I had to let go and move on, like when they told me that nobody would accept me as a teacher, because in my mind, I thought that if I were making an effort and controlling myself, then I deserved a chance. So that also hurt, and I think sometimes bullying will take another form. that's not like people calling you a loser. That doesn't happen too often as an adult, but being bullied can mean not being given a chance and people rejecting you based on their own first impressions and not taking an effort to take another look at you. Oh.
Did it ever get to a point where like you wanna like ever go to school?
Yes. I did have one case of bullying that was so constant that I couldn't take it anymore, and I actually had to take a day off from school. So that did happen when I was much older, when I was a senior in high school. I was a victim of a severe case of cyberbullying for 6 months, and what they did was they created a fake screen name and they put a fake AOL profile. Those were the days 13 years ago before we had Facebook and MySpace. So I communicated with this girl who I thought liked me. It was actually an imaginary person. So that was really horrible, and I can understand why some people get to the point where they want to hurt themselves, and I'm hoping that since 13 years have passed, society will finally put a stop to this insanity. I'm going to get to you next.
Did you know that other people in your school that were bullied like you, they had autism?
What's your name? Alex. To answer your question, Alex, I did know lots of other people who were bullied even worse than me, and I was always a bystander, which was not cool. I think being a bystander can be almost as bad as doing the bullying, because the torment is fueled by those who stand around and do nothing. So whenever somebody else was being bullied, I did not stick up for them. I just pretended it was not happening. I was like, well, finally they're focusing on somebody else. This could be a nice vacation for me. Yeah.
If you didn't have autism, what do you think your life would be like?
That's a good question. If I did not have autism, what would my life be like? I don't know if I would have published a book or gone skydiving. My autism makes me want to do something called overcompensating. I'm more prone to putting myself in situations where I don't belong. When people say, Jesse, you don't fit in here, or this is not for you, I'll say, that's the whole point. So I think that I probably would not pursue the things I have, but I cannot say if my life would be easier or better, because I know lots of people who are so-called normal and they struggle with the same hurt and pain. So I think the point is we all struggle with something, regardless of whether we actually have a disability.
I have another mic. Do you want me to?
Sure.
Did you ever consider hurting yourself?
Yes, I definitely did. When I was a senior in high school, during that 6-month piece of... Yes, I did get to that point during my 6-month case of cyberbullying, mainly because I developed feelings for this imaginary person. And people, as I said many times, people with Asperger's are not able to let go. So at one point during the prank, they ended contact with me, and I went absolutely crazy because I needed to know what happened. And during that point, when I didn't know why this person ended contact, I became very distressed. And when I found out it was all just a prank, I thought of hurting myself. I thought, how could somebody devote that much time to tormenting me? When I was transitioning into middle school, that was also probably the second worst time in my life. And I think it's going to be easier for you because we address bullying. middle school is a very difficult time. I compare middle school to being pregnant. It's a very, not that I know what it's like, but when a woman is pregnant, she's glowing and beautiful, but there are side effects. And there will be side effects for you, but I hope that throughout the experience, you know that you're very special and you're going to have a lot more support than I did when I was your age. Thank you.
Did you tell an adult when you're in trouble?
Did I tell an adult? Yes, I did. And they did address bullying when I was that age, but at the same time, a lot of the anti-bullying movement was about teachers saying, well, did you do anything to bring this on yourself? So they did not take it seriously like they do now. So a lot of times the adults seemed just as bad as the people making fun of me.
Why do people bully so much?
For many reasons. Not because they're necessarily terrible people, but some bullies have lives in which they're not complimented. They feel that nobody likes them. So sometimes the only way they can feel good about themselves is by making fun of somebody else and thinking that there's somebody else who's geekier and weirder than they are. And other times it's just because they don't understand. So when you don't understand something, you tend to react with fear and even hatred. So a lot of bullying can be ended through education.
Can I pop over here, Jesse?
Did you ever feel like when you were alone, like nobody was with you and everyone was against you?
There were times I felt that way, but there were also many times when I did have support from a few teachers and several classmates. But I did feel alone because I knew nobody else who had mild autism. There's that expression, birds of a feather flock together. So sometimes kids with common interests like heavy rock music or birds or something, whatever it is, they'll congregate in a group, but there was nobody else who could relate to my challenges. So I did feel very alone because of that. But my teachers who did support me made a huge difference, like the ones in this school do for you.
What would you say was the worst time, when you were in school?
The worst time was probably going to middle school because in middle school I had to change classes, and back in elementary school I had relationships with the people in my class. I had strong support from teachers who were protective and kind, but in middle school it felt like I was a piece of cattle moving from class to class to class. And I'm not trying to scare you because I think your experience will be a lot smoother. They actually take bullying seriously now, and you will have a much easier time in middle school, and you'll be happier. So middle school was hard simply because of the change, but that was back in the 1990s. So I'm very excited for your transition next year, and it's going to be amazing.
Did bullying ever interfere with your learning?
Definitely. In 9th grade, when I was struggling with acceptance, when I was in a science class where people would throw spitballs and stuff, and it seemed like nobody liked me, and I was put in a special education class. Then as I grew older and I did things like perform in shows and did extracurricular activities, more people accepted me and gave me a chance. So as that went on, my grades improved and I was on the honor roll and so forth. So bullying does affect academic performance.
Jesse, we probably have time for 2 more questions, which makes me sad because I can see there's a lot of great ones. But do you want to put one on this side and I'll grab one from over here for the last one?
Did people ever push me down and throw stuff at me? Yes, that did happen from time to time, but most of the time it was just insults. I was like a walking bullseye for spitballs in that science class when I was in 9th grade. But I hope that answers your question, and I just want to address something else before I depart. I understand that there's a lot of bus drivers in the audience. I thank you for being here and making an effort to understand my younger peers. You will be a huge advocate toward making the lives of these students much easier. And I think that education should continue in the bus, because that's where a lot of bullying tends to occur, because there's no faculty members present. So I know that after I leave here, you will continue to fight for my young friends, and good for you.
Take one more question.
Do we have a question from faculty members?
Let's let her go, and then if any faculty members
Okay,
have
sure.
Did you ever consider yourself special because you had autism?
Let me think. I don't know if I would consider myself special, but at the same time, I knew that there's something about me that made me unique, and I felt special in the sense that there were some things I struggled with and other things I did extremely well, even better than most normal people without a disability. So I felt special in the sense that I knew I had some talents, and I could work with those talents to be successful.
Are there any adults or teachers, faculty in here that have a question? Jesse, there's one way back there.
You speak up. Thanks.
Jesse, did you give family help and support through all of your time?
Yes, I think my family did an amazing job when I was young, especially because they knew very little about Asperger's, so anything they did wrong was with the best of intentions. For example, they sometimes thought that my abuse was a self-inflicted consequence, like I was creating it myself. They had the attitude that there's a consequence for being different, but as time went on, they grew to accept me and some of my decisions. I kind of don't make that easier with my decisions of walking over 2,000 miles, jumping out of a plane, but they're more accepting than they used to be about such endeavors, so I'm very fortunate.
I see another one back there, Jesse.
What would you say to any kids in here who have experienced bullying and don't know what to do? What would you say the first thing they should do is?
The first thing they should do is look at themselves in the mirror and give to themselves what does not always come from somebody else. Because there's only so much you can do about bullying, but what's worse is when you feel alone, and there's sometimes you cannot do something about it. So you have to know how far you've come. And with regards to bullying, the best thing to do is, try to use your words before involving a faculty member. And if that doesn't work, you go to an adult, because some people are not going to respond to education, or they're not going to care if you have Asperger's. That's only a small percentage of people, but I have this expression: you cannot make chicken salad out of chicken manure. So, for those people who are not going to stop bullying you, you take further action, and you find a way to put a stop to it by involving an adult, and keep remembering that you are incredible and you're not able to make everybody like you. That's something that was never taught to me as a child. I always learned how to stop my inappropriate behavior, think about what I was doing to bring it on myself, but I never learned until I was an adult how to look in that mirror and know that I am special, and sometimes it's not always my fault if people don't like me.
Are there any other faculty questions? Oh, I see one in the back right corner, Jesse. We'll take this last one and then we'll wrap it up.
Can you hold meetings for parents? Is that your parents were educated and educate their kids better about situations that kids have trouble with?
You asked, is it good to call meetings with parents?
No, do you personally do meetings with parents? Like how you do a meeting for the kids and how the faculty that will be here? Like with parents sometimes, they're able to teach their kids about certain situations.
Yes, there are audiences composed of parents. So I do a lot of work with the parents of autistic children, and I do my best to let them know that if their child is playing alone for a little while at recess, it does not mean that child is going to end up having no friends. We sometimes forget as parents that a lot of our children's behavior is normal. It's not just because they have Asperger's. For example, there was one parent who was really concerned that her child was playing alone at recess once in a while. I said to her, if you had a day when you were constantly stimulated, always around people, and if someone bothered you during your 5-minute coffee break, would you accept that, or would you want to say a bad word to that person? Everybody needs some time alone, and everyone needs to be isolated once in a while. So a lot of times the things we worry about are just normal things that everybody goes through.
All right, Jesse, I know we have to get some other buildings back for their lunch schedule, so I think we're going to have to wrap it up. Boys and girls from St. Louis Park, can you join me in thanking Jesse for this wonderful